Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday, and you know what that means.
Front Office Friday! With my dogs going crazy.
Your dog's going crazy, or you're going crazy, Keith?
Both, everybody. We're all going crazy. It's Front Office Friday. Let's go.
It's Friday. We're talking NBA basketball. Today, we do have a special guest coming on. It's Bryce Simon. You can follow him at Motor City Hoops. Bryce, how you doing, man?
What's up, guys, man? I just tweeted this out, Trevor and Keith. This is like a bucket list item for me. I told my wife the other day, I said, I'm going to go on the Front Office Show. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is like the pinnacle of what I've ever wanted in the podcast world. So I've got to know both of you in the real world, the podcasting world. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Bryce, I appreciate that, but put better things on your bucket list. Jeez. Dream bigger than this.
Dream big. But we're happy to have you here, Bryce. For those of you guys who don't know, Bryce is doing some stuff over on the Basketball Bulletin with us, which I'm putting a link in the comments right now to that. The Basketball Bulletin, Keith and I's Substack that we've had going on. Yeah, there it is. You guys go check it out. There's a lot of great stuff going on over there. Bryce is contributing all kinds of draft content, which is absolutely fantastic. Keith, you've got some game notes up from today as well. Lots of stuff going on over there. So make sure you guys check that out. Let's just dive into it. I've got a lot of comments and questions already coming in. Aniket Mohan, Bryce, this is for you, said, it's hard to be a Pistons fan in 2024.
So a peek behind the curtain real quick. Like I'm not a lifelong Pistons fan. I got my podcast start, whatever, just randomly. It was a Pistons podcast and I've grown it out since then. And so like, I don't necessarily have like this emotional attachment to the Pistons. It's just the team that I cover and talk about on podcasts and those type of things. So I endure these seasons a little bit better than your lifelong Pistons fans do.
So you're able to get through it with a little bit less pain than what some others are dealing with. But when you're looking ahead, can we give some optimism for the Pistons? When you're looking ahead to the draft, is there hope coming here for Detroit?
I mean, not for a superstar. I mean, if we really get into draft conversation today, I think, a lot of people that follow this know this isn't a Victor draft. This isn't a Cade Cunningham draft. It's not a Zion draft. There's level of superstars, but that's not really what this class is. I think there's some good pieces. The level of optimism, guys, and we've had Keith on all the time to talk about the Pistons, and we appreciate him so much. A friend of the pod, we call him, and some gear as well. I think, Keith, you were the one guy we've sent gear to because that's how much we love you. But
wait. Now, Keith, I've tried to send you gear before and you've always declined. Now, why is that?
It's not team specific gear, right, Keith? It was podcast
gear. Yeah, I would wear Pistons gear. I'd rock Pistons gear. I'm wearing New Orleans Pelicans shorts today.
We were years ago, a couple years ago, we were going to do Lakers Nation hoodies. And I said, Keith, I have to ask, do you want one? You were a hard no on that.
Toilet paper. I donated to somebody first. No, for real. I'll take any free gear anybody ever wants to sell me, but I'm not wearing anything Lakers. That will never, ever happen unless the team hires me. Then, as I have said, I will happily paint my house purple and yellow and call it a day.
That is fair. That's fair. And I am the same way with the Celtics and green and all that kind of stuff. So that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. What's that?
You don't even wear green on St. Patrick's Day.
I do not. In fact, my daughter asked me the other day. She said, it's St. Patrick's Day coming up. Are we going to wear green? I said, no. She said, well, you're going to get pinched. I said, then I'll get pinched. So that's okay.
Yep, I hear you. Hey, Bryce, let me ask you. So let's take kind of draft position out of it. We know the Pistons will probably be picking somewhere in the top few picks.
Yep.
Who's the guy you like most for them of the guys in this draft?
Yeah, so I mean, Alex Sarr is the number one on my personal board, like big picture. But if I did a Piston specific board, it would be Zachary Risacher. And so that is the guy that I have number 2 on my board. And so I think he would fit best. Now, there's a conversation to be had, and we've had it on our podcast. And I think other teams will have these conversations as well. Like, if you want Alex Sarr and you think he's this defensive anchor, would you move on from your current big? Now, I know that's probably blasphemy. Jalen Duren just had like a 25-25 game, all of that, but there are some defensive questions around Jalen Duren. He's very young. Like, we don't have to turn this into a Pistons conversation, but that's what it would be. I think Alex Sarr needs to be a 5, and so I think it makes more sense for Risacher, and I don't think he's that much better of a prospect in terms of, tiers and those type of things.
Got it. Yeah, I guess my only worry is with Risacher, is there too much overlap with Thompson?
Sure.
Like, is it? But you can make it work, right? If you can play high level wings together, the fact that Cade can be a lead ball handler for an offense, I think you can really make that work. So, yeah, I think, it's funny. The deeper I get into this draft, and I think it's just human nature, the more I like it. I like a lot of these guys. I think what fans are going to struggle with is, right, it's March Madness time. I get right over here on the TV. I have the Purdue game going on against Michigan State. Sorry. I should have told everybody they're doing some work on our house. So the dogs are absolutely losing their minds today. So March Madness time, I think what people are going to struggle with a little bit is some of the best prospects in this draft class are not going to be on TV during March Madness. They're just not. They're either international players, they're G League Ignite guys. So you're going to have to go find that footage somewhere else. And Bryce, that's why I'm so excited to have you here with us and then doing what you're doing over on the Basketball Bulletin. So far, your scouting reports have been guys people may not know all that much about. Alex Sarr, Zachary Risacher, and Ron Holland posted today. So I'm super excited. People go sign up, subscribe, because this is really good stuff. Super easily digestible too. It's not like when I write, I tend to write paragraphs upon paragraphs of stuff. This is bullet points. It's quick hit thoughts. It reads like scout notes, which I know is what they are. And I'll say this too, because he's not going to talk himself up, Trevor. Bryce played Division I college basketball, so this guy knows what he's talking about. This is not me who barely played varsity basketball in high school. Coming in there, dropping in with my comments. So Bryce definitely knows this stuff.
Real quick, Trevor, so you said that of my top 14, 6 are not playing in their seasons are either they're like Isaiah Collier's season is probably over at USC because they're not making the NCAA tournament. Like maybe they go play in the NIT or something like that. And
I don't think so. I think they finished with a less than 500 record.
Oh yeah. So we've probably seen the end of Collier. Overseas guys, Ignite guys are, that season is still going, but Holland. So I have purposely done Sarr, whose season is over. Risacher is still playing, but people aren't as familiar. I want these college guys' seasons to finish out before I put those ones, before I finish those ones and put them up. And yeah, this is easy for me to do the Basketball Bulletin because these are legit my raw notes, guys. Like if anybody hasn't read through them, and that's what I wanted a peek behind the curtain. This is what I'm writing down as I'm watching players. And I thought maybe people would enjoy it. I don't know, but it seems like some people have taken to it a little bit.
I'll say one more, but bona fide for Bryce too. Sam Vecini has him on the Game Theory podcast to talk draft and scouting stuff a lot. And if you're getting the Sam nod, you have to know what you're talking about. He's not putting anybody on his show to talk about prospects that doesn't know what they're getting into and doesn't actually put the work and the time in. Anybody can have an opinion. I learned this direct from former NBA scouts. Anybody can have an opinion. Not everybody puts the work into forming that opinion. And I know, Bryce, I know you do. So that's why I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. And again, you guys can go check it out. basketballbulletin.substack.com is where you can find it. Keith, I've got a cap question here for you.
Yeah,
Ishab said which cap team could benefit from a team trying to avoid the second level of cap restriction? So that second tier apron, which team could perhaps absorb some contracts, pick up some assets? Who do you look at as a team that could potentially do something like that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think too, what we're starting to see develop a little bit with some of these cap space teams is we're starting to see how they're thinking about their cap space. And for example, Toronto extended Kelly Olynyk. I think there's a good chance now Toronto just says, let's keep Bruce Brown and we'll stay over the cap. and we'll figure it out if we want to trade those guys later or whatever we want to do. We'll sort through it all, on our own kind of timeline here versus being forced into decisions for free agency. Then you have a team like Utah. They're going to have a chunk of cap space, but we know, or at least feel really confident, that a large chunk of their plan is going to be to use that to renegotiate and extend Lauri Markkanen. Now, they'll still have some left over for sure, but that's going to be how they're going to use a chunk of theirs. So then you start looking at a team like Philadelphia. Could Philadelphia, instead of pursuing free agents, which a lot of the guys who actually get to free agency this year, they're really going to be like tier 2, tier 3 free agents, because even some of them who are free agents, like, for example, James Harden, which I know Philly would never go that route. We all know that. But he's not really going to be a real free agent because we all know he's going back to the Clippers. If LeBron hits free agency, there's only somewhat of a chance he's a real free agent. He may just opt out and re-up with the Lakers on a longer term deal or lock in some money through a, he can't really extend, so through opting out. So now you're talking guys like Miles Bridges and other players of that ilk that are going to be leading it. So Philly may say, that's not really where we want to go, and especially for 4-year contracts, which is what it'll take to get a lot of these guys in free agency. So Philly's a really good team that could look around and say, hey, second apron team X, and I don't know who that'll be, but you want to get out of a deal? Great, we're here. Orlando could do that. Orlando's going to be sitting on a bunch of cap space. The Pistons are in position to do that. And this could be a year where the Pistons, rather than, hey, we'll eat bad contracts for draft picks for you, no, we'll actually take a contract for a guy who can play. And we think it'll be somebody we can drop into the mix here. So those are the teams that I think could benefit, as well as you could see a handful of other teams do things where it's like, hey, like the Brooklyn Nets, for example, could say, hey, we've got Ben Simmons. Doesn't help you second apron wise right now, but next year that's $40 million coming off your books. If you're looking to get rid of a guy that maybe has $100 million left over the next 2 or 3 years, let's start talking trades. And those are going to be what's interesting. That's why we're calling it kind of the summer of the trade. Free agent market is weak, and teams are going to want to improve, and the way to do it's going to be through trade.
Yeah, I was going to say that this free agent market, there's not a lot of guys. There's a decent amount of teams with cap space. Keith, I was just over on Spot Track checking out the cap space tracker here. I'll put it up on the screen, but there's a decent amount of teams that have some money to spend, but there's not really a lot of players to spend it on, which again fuels our whole thesis that this is going to be the summer of the trade around the NBA, and that's probably how this cap space is going to wind up getting burned, rather than, and it could be in absorbing contracts in exchange for assets, but also teams are going to be getting a lot of their transactions done via a deal rather than going out there and throwing a bunch of money at, I don't know, Tobias Harris or whoever is out there.
Yeah, for example, if we look at, these are like my top free agent, like, let's just look at just the point guards, just because I think this is illustrative of the point I want to make here. My top 4 free agent point guards are Tyrese Maxey, restricted, Drew Holiday, player option, maybe extends, James Harden, and then Emmanuel Quickley, restricted. None of those 4 guys, barring something really surprising, is going anywhere. They're all going to be back with the teams they're on. If you flip over to like the small forwards, I've got Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, OG Anunoby, Miles Bridges. Bridges is probably in play. The other guys, probably not. They're probably all going to be right where they are. Power forwards, LeBron, Pascal Siakam. Though, like the Pacers, Siakam's going to hit free agency, but they did not give up 3 first-round picks to let him walk. We don't think LeBron's going anywhere either. So you're taking just these guys right now, they're on the free agent list, but they're all going to come off the board for various reasons. And then you start talking Miles Bridges, Malik Monk, Markelle Fultz, D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Williams, Tobias Harris. Those are the guys you're talking about. And that's where nobody's lining up to throw those guys mega contracts. It's just not going to happen.
And that's also where some of this cap space is going to get eaten up, right? Like I'm looking at some of the names you're talking about, and like Emmanuel Quickley, well, that's going to eat into the Raptors cap space there. Indiana Pacers, Pascal Siakam's going to eat into that cap space. DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, that's going to eat into Chicago Bulls. Tyrese Maxey with the 76ers. So this looks like a lot of teams because, like, as somebody who covers the Pistons, I'm like, dang, they have all that cap space, but there's going to be a lot of other teams with it as well. And then as I go through that, I was like, nah, there's not going to be as many suitors because a lot of these teams are going to be off the board once those new contracts kick in for those players you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in this cap space view here, I will say on Spot Track, we're in the middle of setting up next year. So not all of these teams listed here are going to have cap space. Like Indiana is probably not anymore. Washington, Chicago, Houston. This is kind of what they could get to if they really kind of cleared the books on everything. Like the Sixers and Pistons, they're not going to have 70+ million, but we'll add draft picks to that. That'll take some away in the like. So we'll continue to refine and update that. Right now, I project about 7 teams to have cap space, maybe only 6. Maybe that could grow up to 8. We'll see where that goes. But this is going to be an interesting off season with all this stuff because I've tweeted it a handful of times. It's the Trevor Simpsons reference. The bus driver says, "Don't make me tap the sign." It is, I made a "Don't make me tap the sign," which is cap space doesn't only have to be used to sign free agents. So
that's right.
It's important to note that.
That's right. That's right. Now, this is also going to be the first summer, and I know we're already like fast forwarding to off-season stuff here. We've got a ton of basketball to talk about still that's happening right now, but this is also going to be the first summer that the truly punitive restrictions from that second-tier apron are going to be in play. So that's the other thing that I'm going to be really keeping an eye on here. It's what kind of an impact does that make around the NBA? How does that change or alter how teams behave this summer? I think that's going to be really fascinating to see because I think some teams we saw last summer, there were teams that were willing to blow past it saying this is our opportunity to get this done before all these really heavy restrictions come into play. Now those are here. And whether or not those restrictions dissuade teams from going past that second-tier apron, that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch too.
Yeah, and which teams say it's too hard to build a roster with these restrictions on us? Because, for example, the LA Clippers, they'll spend whatever it takes because this is just a hobby for Steve Ballmer, right? Like this is, hey, I'm gonna, if it costs me $1 billion in roster plus tax penalties, so what? That's what it cost me, and he would happily do that to build a title team. But what may have eventually happened is you may have like Lawrence Frank go to him and say, "Hey, Steve, like we got to shed some because I can't get players now. All I'm getting is minimum salary signings or some of our draft picks, and they're still out a few picks as well." So those are the kind of question marks you come into here where it used to be certain teams could outspend everybody and blow right through. But I think the important thing to note is that's not really a way you can operate anymore. That's what these restrictions have done is made it hard to build a team. So that's going to be a very different kind of thing that we'll be watching over the course of this summer, next summer. It may take 2-3 years to fully flesh out and see the results, but we're going to start seeing that come up.
Real quick, just from a draft perspective with this, I'm really interested to see how these teams hold on to their picks at the end of the first round. I just counted through the second round, and I think I would say 18 teams or 18 of the picks of the, I guess there's only 28 in the second round, are teams that are like actually trying to compete, like teams that are trying to be good. And I think they're holding on to those because of the restrictions you're talking about now in terms of they can't just go out and spend. So you may have to go draft somebody. And then from my perspective is a lot of these quote unquote older prospects, I think they're more valuable to those teams, right? Like both of the teams you guys cover, right, Trevor? Like the Lakers need someone that can come in and play right away. Like who is the guard?
Not Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Not Jalen Hood-Schifino. That did not work out. I actually was a Jalen Hood-Schifino. I liked him. Looks like I'm wrong right now, but there are some guys like that. I think that their stocks are higher than in previous drafts because we're going, hey, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Timberwolves, like all of these teams are going to need guys that can come in and contribute right away.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be something to watch. I mean, look at, and sometimes we see the NBA teams copy each other. Look at what Jaime Jaquez has done this year. I think that's only going to further that notion that, hey, it's no longer unfashionable to go draft a guy who is older that can step in and play right away, especially with these new restrictions. Having those guys that can actually play on the floor and don't have to take 2-3 years to develop, that's even more valuable with this new CBA in place, because you have those guys on such a cheap deal.
Yeah, you either have two things. Either you have your 8, 9, 10-man rotation that you feel really good about, and you could say, hey, we could take an upside play here on this player X. We feel like he'll really develop. Kind of Minnesota with Leonard Miller, right? We feel really solid about our rotation. I think they knew we're probably going to re-sign some guys. Let's grab Leonard Miller and see if we can develop him. They've had a lot of success with, obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns, but Naz Reid as well. We can maybe develop him into a player. Then you have other teams like Miami, which was, we don't have a ton of depth. We may trade a bunch of that depth because at the time there was the Damian Lillard stuff. So we need somebody who can step in right away and play. And Jaime Jaquez is a good example of that. It was a Danny Ainge pick, but Peyton Pritchard at the end of Ainge's tenure in Boston was, hey, we're going to bring him in. Grant Williams was an older player. We're definitely, some of those contenders are going to be looking at that. I think like Denver drafted a whole host of guys, made a bunch of moves in this last year. So whether it be Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, older guys that they felt like, hey, within a year or two, maybe they can drop into rotation spots because the Nuggets don't have overwhelming depth. Now it's turned out Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, even Zeke Naji has had a little bit of a resurgence this year. Those guys are starting to play a little bit better. And now those younger players are kind of, they're spending more time in the G League. They're at the end of the bench. But those are the different draft philosophies that we're going to see really become really, really important. Because, yeah, if you're the Phoenix Suns in the rare year coming up where you have a first-round draft pick, you're probably going to want to use it on somebody who can play, because you're going to want to get somebody who can slide in there, take rotation minutes, and go. So that's going to be, something that's going to be really, really interesting to watch over the next couple of years, because, the second apron restrictions clearly change how you acquire players via trade and free agent signings, but it really does change things draft strategy-wise as well. So that's a great call out.
Here's a comment coming in from True Seeker. I'm on my lunch break, but I'll listen to every minute. Thanks for saying hi. Yeah, look, if you're doing this thing, rest your head in your hands so nobody can see your earbuds, or you got the hoodie up or whatever. Look, if your boss says anything, conference call. If your boss says anything, we will write you a note. We'll say it's okay. It's front office Friday. This is important stuff. You need to be here. I'll
say too, really important that Tuesday and Wednesday you start planting the seeds for, I'm not feeling so hot.
Yes, there
today.
You go.
Like, hey, I don't know what's going on. My kid came home with something from school or whatever it is. So that way, when you call out Thursday and Friday to watch the NCAA tournament next week, you already kind of put that in there. And everybody's like, man, I hope, Joe's feeling better tomorrow. Like, poor guy, he had to call out sick today. And meanwhile, you're posted up on the couch watching the tourney.
I'm super jealous. My wife is taking Friday off next week, and I'll be in the classroom teaching. So I'm a teacher. Brutal. Trevor understands all of this. And just so all of you listeners, Trevor asked me to come on last week, and I had to turn him down because I was on my lunch break at the time, but I was like, Trevor, I got a class. Now, if it would have hit during my planning period, there may have been a recording from my classroom, whatever. I was like, how can I figure this out? I wasn't able to. So all of you listening while you're at work, I go through the same struggle. I try to tune in whenever I can as well, but usually it hits right whenever I actually have kids in the classroom.
Bryce, I have a feeling your students are going to be doing a lot of worksheets while the NCAA tournament's on.
Yeah, it's I was not happy when I saw that. Obviously, I'm on spring break this week. This is why I was able to make it. And so there's a lot of good college basketball on right now, right? Like it's conference tournament. It's not the same as those first 4 days of the NCAA tournament. Those are my favorite 4 days of the entire year. As you said, I got a chance to play in it twice. And so there's some nostalgia that goes with it and all of that. So I'm super jealous of my wife that she got Friday off next week, and she'll be at home watching games while I'm not watching games in the classroom.
Bryce, if I remember right, didn't you beat Holy Cross in the conference tournament?
Yep.
One of those years? Yeah. Yeah,
yep.
I remember that.
Yep. So
Keith remembers everything basketball related. Hey, who was the MVP of the All-Star game in 1994?
Oh, no,
Keith will
not
give
the
me the
All-Star
answer.
game. You give me, dude, that's too much.
But you did the last few All-Star games. We did that on a show like a year ago.
Yeah,
You
I
did like
remember
the
that.
last few All-Star games you remembered. I'm like, man, I don't remember that. Let's get
but
into
I
a little bit of the
forgot,
news here.
at the grocery store last weekend, so it all balances
That
out.
that's the problem. We put so much attention on basketball that it's the other stuff that just gets gets bumped out.
My tiny walnut brain only has so much capacity.
And it's all filled with basketball, Marvel, and The Simpsons, and that takes up all the space.
That's about it. Yeah, a little bit of Star Wars in there too. Somebody's down for Purdue. I can't tell who it is. It is not Zach Edey. Can't see. I can't get an angle on it. Oh well, it's not Zach Edey, so they're probably going to be all right.
Super sticker from Truth Seeker there. We appreciate that. There
was a question for Bryce. I want to pull it up.
Yeah.
Where was it?
I was just looking for that. It flew past me.
Here it is.
You found it? Okay.
Yep. Devin Carter. Bryce, what do you think of Devin Carter? Because I'm interested in this too. Providence kid.
Yeah, so he's good. So a little here's I'll read through kind of. I do an archetype potential role whenever I draft I've already written this one on Carter. Primary initiating guard, but has shown floor spacing this past season. So if you look at his overall numbers, this year tends to look like an outlier. The shooting stroke is a little bit, but I don't like to get into mechanics too much. Case in point, Tyrese Halliburton. So I'm not sure he's going to break down the defense straight isolation, but I love the way he uses angles, operating ball screens, and then he gets after it defensively. True on-ball defensive maker, can at least defend those two backcourt positions, and then I kind of differentiate like solid defense with playmaking defense. Devin Carter does both as a guard. I'm really intrigued. I may not be quite as high yet. I have him in the 20 to 29 range. So I do tiers. So my rankings kind of matter, but at the end of the day, if people are in the same tier, it would go down to team fit. So I could see him getting into the early 20s, maybe a little bit higher. We see him making a run right now, right? They knocked off Creighton last night. Here's the other thing people need to understand about Providence. They lost, quote unquote, their best player in Bryce Hopkins to an ACL. So, he's doing this without a full strength team. Even their, stud freshman that they were supposed to have, Garway Dual, who is a name people should know moving forward, hasn't really panned out as a freshman. So he has really kind of run this team, done a great job. He has played himself, and he is the exact, like if a team at the end of the first round, one of these contenders needs a backup point guard that can play off the ball a little bit as well, Devin Carter is their guy.
So I wrote about him, just a bullet about him in the basketball bulletin today, because I did NCAA notes too, because I've been watching so much of the conference tourneys. What do you think about this is a comp for him potentially? Clearly this one is close to my heart. Derek White. I see a lot of Derek White in his game.
I think that's a high end. I mean, obviously, and
sure. We're always get there.
Yes, we're always. That's why I don't put. If you guys read through these, I rarely put actual names with the comps. That's why I said, how do I phrase it? Potential role, not potential comp. Like Alex Sarr, I said Evan Mobley. I'm not saying it's 1-to-1, but it gives people a visual. So Derek White is the type of player. Like Javon Carter is like an easy one. Like they share a name. So that ilk of a player. I like to talk archetypes and roles. So yes, I think the high end for Devin Carter is a starter version of that. I think the lower end is whatever the second unit version is of a Derek White.
It's the shot blocking for me.
Sure.
Because this guy he's a legit shot blocker. This is not somebody who stumbles into the two shot blocks and that. Yeah, he's won a game. He's won a game a year ago too. So plus, man, Bryce, if you don't know this already, you'll learn this. I know Trevor knows this. You give me a guard that gets on the glass, I love it. Sure. I love guards who rebound, because to me that just shows a level of toughness that you don't always see from guards. So I love, if you show me a guard that's willing to get in there and mix it up on the boards, that's something I really, really like. And that I tend to, sometimes those guys, I get them right. Sometimes I end up overrating them, because then it's like, oh, that was the only skill he had. But like one of my favorite guys with that was Emmanuel Quickley. Because he rebounded the heck out of the ball for a little guy at Kentucky, which is not always a Kentucky guard thing. But he's tough. It's so wild too. Just since we're on Kentucky, real quick, it is crazy to me that we have two guys who might both be top 5 picks in Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepard, and they come off the bench for Kentucky. And this is not like one of those classic Calipari teams that's loaded with 10 first-round picks. Like, it's just wild, and it just goes to show it doesn't really matter. It's about like making an impact when you get to play, because they still play plenty. But I know some people are going to be tuning in, NBA fans are going to be like, I've been hearing about these two dudes for weeks now. They both come off the bench. What is happening here?
Yeah. It's very interesting. Devin Carter averages almost 9 rebounds.
Yeah.
Real quick on the shooting, I mentioned like he's 38% on crazy volume this year. And just like kind of how we do this stuff in the scouting world and all that, he was less than 30% his first 2 years. And he's a career 72% free throw shooter. And I know people say like, well, the 3-point number, I get it. I understand it. The mechanics are a little bit funky, and the free throw percentage is something that a lot of scouts and evaluators actually value more in a prospect at the college level than even the 3-point percentage. So just wanted to throw it out there. And then the rebounding, I way overvalue rebounding. I love guys that defensive rebound, offensive rebound. I think there's a translatable mindset and toughness. I have been told by scouts in organizations that I overvalue it, though, that like I need to stop valuing that stuff quite as much, that teams may not care. Now, archetype matters in this, but I've been told like, hey, Bryce, like you probably need to stop talking about how much he defensive rebounds quite as much. As a former coach, I can't help it. Like, I'm going to continue to do it because I think it matters.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at like the Josh Harts of the world, right? Who's able to get in and rebound the hell out of the basketball from the guard position. Those guys tend to stand out. We think about Rajon Rondo. We go back further. We think about Jason Kidd. I mean, these are the guys that can really make a difference by giving you something that you don't typically see at their position. And so I agree with, like, I kind of fall in love with the guys who can really do something beyond what you typically see from their position. And on the glass, especially with what the Lakers have been doing lately on giving up offensive rebounds, man, I'm really starting to lock in on guys who can just flat out rebound the basketball.
Well, Brandon Pajimski in this last class was somebody that was a huge part of his scout. And like a team that comes to mind, the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Like if there is one thing that people question right now, it's what? That maybe they get killed on the offensive boards. If you gave them a wing, this not saying Devin Carter, they don't need him. They have Case and Wallace. But if you gave them a wing that was a huge plus positional rebounder to help out with some of that, that makes a little bit of sense for them, right? So I think, context matters. So
I think what kind of rebounder you are too. Are you just getting the ones in your area?
Yes.
Like I'm not going to pretend that Zach Edey is a bad rebounder, but Zach Edey is getting rebounds because he's a half a foot taller than most of the guys he's playing against, and he's getting them all right around the basket area. But a guy like if you go back to even his Villanova days with Josh Hart was he's cliche here, but has a nose for the ball. Like he's gonna go dig it out, he's gonna go find it, he's gonna go get there. He just wants it a little bit more, and that's how he is such a good rebounder. He has that great timing and instincts. Josh Hart's also, he doesn't get credit for how athletic he is because he's a very quick second jumper. So he's really good at going up, tipping the ball away, then going up and getting it. Which is that's just a skill that a lot of guys don't have. So fake Trevor Lane's asking you where your hat is, right?
So it's funny because I read the comments as we record. So like while you're talking, I'm laughing at stuff in the comments. I'm sure people that are watching live are like, why is Bryce have all of these? I also just I get a boost of like, this is like a huge hit. This is like a drug for me. So like, I'm like super amped up and excited. And so I'm always making facial expressions. I don't wear hats. They give me headaches. So I noticed this earlier that you were both wearing them. First yours, Keith, because Quentin Post is actually one of my favorite players. That's not a first round pick. And I know there's some age stuff there. So I noticed yours first. And then I was like looking at Trevor's trying to figure out, what his was. And it's like, all right, who's going to comment on my bald head and black?
Well, somebody asked if it was if you were Jonas Valanciunas.
Oh, so I saw the Jonas Valanciunas comment, but I didn't understand it. I thought
that was definitely towards you, my man.
Gotcha.
I will say this: that is like Trevor's only Laker hat that I like. I think that hat is very sharp. I do enjoy
I
it.
agree.
It's probably because yellow's not really mixed in that one all that much. Yeah, I wore the BC hat as a shout out to, if the committee had any guts, they'd give him an at-large seed and they'd make him a, probably a top. I'll go 2 since they didn't win the ACC tournament, but they're probably not gonna. They're probably headed to the NIT. But yeah, I like Quentin Post, man. He can really play. I think he may sneak into the late first round or late second round. Sorry, not first round, second round, especially if he's willing to do a 2-way contract.
Yep.
We see now 45 and below, even now creeping up towards the higher 40s. We've definitely got some guys that are, if they're willing to take 2-way contracts, that gets a lot of guys drafted. And he's the kind of guy I think you could put in the G League for most of a year or two and let the guy work. So
yeah, no, I mean,
man, Dan the Man, brutal comment.
Hey, here's the funny thing, and I said it earlier. None of this stuff gets to me because I have no emotional attachment to whether this team wins or loses. So, like my students, guys, nobody will say anything in the comments that is worse than what my students try to do. And I tell them, and I don't like to talk about stuff this way, but I said, guys, I get paid the same for the podcast, whether the Pistons win or lose. Honestly, we get more viewers when they lose. So I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, I love doing it. I've met so many great people from it. And it gives me a chance to talk and watch basketball. And it's opened up countless other opportunities, including this one.
That's great. Trevor, I want to go to something we talked about on the show the other day. Nikola Vucevic, or Vucevic, I should say.
I was going to say, wait.
yeah. Nikola Vucevic. So the Washington Wizards rookie signing. We had talked about how he was coming over and he got bought out. So his contract details came in. We've got him on Spot Track now. You don't need to pull it up. Don't pull it up. But he signed a 2-year deal. And what they did was they gave him a pretty good bump for the rest of this year. They gave him about $2.4 million. And then they gave him a team option for the next season. And it's just a straight team option. So my guess is what we're going to see happen here is they are going to decline that team option, then use his Tristan. Sorry.
Tristan.
I'm really butchering it here. Tristan.
We got it.
Thank you, Kellen. My guess is they're going to decline that team option, and then they are going to use his non-bird rights, and that's how they're going to sign him for a little bit more money than they could have done through the second-round pick exception. Give him a 3 or 4 year contract that way. And part of the reason why they couldn't use the second-round pick exception, they had to dip into the non-taxpayer. When a team contributes towards a player's buyout internationally, that money that they pay gets put into the player's cap hit in the first year that they actually come over. That's why you don't often see teams buy guys out of their international contracts. They'll wait till it expires, or they'll wait till the offseason and the player will trigger an out clause to go to the NBA. In this case, the Wizards actually bought him out and came over. I like this kid's game. He has shown major improvements the last couple years with Partizan, where he can play. He can step out and shoot. He's smaller. He was initially billed as a 7-footer. He's not a 7-footer. He's probably about 6'10" or so. And he's not like real super big and rugged inside. He's not kind of like the Nikola Jokic type of Serbian player that people think of often. But he can step out and shoot a little bit. He's got a lot of skill. And in a Washington front court that remains in transition, I think he's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up some of his numbers here. You're right. I mean, this season now it's only 12 games, but in the EuroLeague, he's shooting the hell out of the ball over his career. This guy's an over 40% shooter from 3. So you certainly will take that. This is, Washington, they've had a rough season. There hasn't been a lot to really celebrate, but this is something for Wizards fans to pay attention to for the final, few weeks of the season for them. And to get a peek at this guy that could be something for them next year. And I do agree with, I think the way they're going to structure that contract, that makes sense. Not something you see all that often as far as the non-bird rights coming into play, but I think it does make sense in this situation to give him a little bit more than he would get otherwise. Yeah,
Jason M in the chat says he's like another Serbian Bjelica. He doesn't do as much off the dribble as Bielitsa did. Bielitsa was a guy who could take a couple dribbles and create a shot. I think like if you talk about rangy forwards with size, like Bojan Bogdanovic is probably the best off the dribble guy. He's really good at taking a dribble. He played guard quite a bit in the NBA before he kind of aged into being a forward. Then you've got Bielitsa in the middle where it's like 1-2 dribbles, attack a closeout, make a play.
Mm-hmm.
Vucevic, Vucevic, he may come into a place where we see him develop that, but he's still very young. I think he only just turned 21. So it was like just turned 21 like earlier this week. So there's still a lot of growth coming there. So I'm excited with him.
Yeah, he is 21 and 4 days right now. Yeah. So still a very young player.
He's somebody I know a lot of people were kind of like, man, Washington got a good drafting stash, and nobody really expected him to come now, but apparently Wizards wanted him out of there, and that may give us a little insight into what they're thinking this summer. Maybe we've got some more front court movement coming, because you can't play him, Kuzma, and Avdia together, and you're not going to be able to have a functional defense if you do that. Right. He's just not that kind of big.
Bryce, we've got a question here from the fake me. Said, I didn't realize Bronny's done with his freshman year. I bet he stays. What do you think happens with Bronny James? Obviously, that could be a major domino in this because of the ties, of course, to LeBron here.
Yeah, so we've talked about this a lot on Game Theory. My personal opinion is I want to evaluate Bronny James as a draft prospect on his merits. And I realize that's hard to do because his dad is who his dad is and all of the news that's been around it. The reason I like to do that, and I think he has real potential to be an NBA player. I don't think he's an NBA player right now. Like he didn't shoot it well enough in his first year at USC. The defensive stuff is really exciting, but he is a smaller guard or like combo guard. And how much can he do off the bounce? Those type of things. And so, I mean, if he goes into the draft, is he going to get picked? Like probably, right? Because of all of the noise around it. But if I'm looking at Bronny James as a real draft prospect, which I think he can be a year from now or 2 years from now, I want him to go back and develop. Another thing with this, he didn't have that this summer, right, guys? Like he had the condition with his heart. And so he didn't have a real offseason to acclimate himself to Division I basketball. I don't care how much AAU and everything else you've played. It's a different level. It's a different game, all of that stuff. And so I would love to see him spring, summer, fall, develop, go through that, everything, and then come back and be good next year and become a draft prospect on the merits of being a really good defender that knocks down shots and maybe provides a little bit of secondary playmaking. And right now, I don't think that's what he's shown at USC.
Yeah, and that could be, I think it'll be really interesting to see, because I think a lot of this comes down to, what does Bronny want? Yeah. Because I think you're right. If he wants to be in the NBA next year, he can go to the draft and someone will draft him. Maybe it'll be the Lakers to try to say, hey, LeBron, let's stick around here. But somebody's going to draft him, right? I don't think he just goes undrafted unless that's what Clutch Sports wants, unless they want to try to push to make him go undrafted. Then he can pick wherever he wants to go.
Sure.
But if he wants to be drafted, he's going to be drafted. However, probably the best thing for him is going to be to stay, particularly if he says, I want to make the NBA on my own merit, not because my dad is LeBron. I think you're right. I think the best thing is probably to stay. And as the chat is mentioning as well, it may be needed in order for him just to get past this whole heart condition. That's going to be obviously important too. As here Craig said, he needs another year to get over the heart condition, to have time to really adjust to the college game and then show what he can really do potentially at the next level.
Yeah, I just want him to have a normal offseason where he can go in, he can train, do all the stuff. That USC team was a circus too. They weren't very good. It was a lot of Isaiah Collier early. Then Bronny came back. When he came back, him and Collier played some together. Then Collier eventually got hurt and went out, and they just never really came together. One of the more underachieving teams, I think, in the country was that team. So I don't know. We'll see, where it goes. I feel like if it was right now, this starts to feel a little bit like LiAngelo Ball when he came in, where it's like all right, we're going to take him because we got the other brother. Yeah, we in this case it would be his dad, but like we've got LeBron, so we'll take him and we'll run through it this way. But it felt like it was very forced. And I think Bronny has more potential than that. I know people who loved his defensive potential as a real come in and be a perimeter stopper. It's important to note too, people haven't seen him. He's one, it's of course he's not his dad, but he's not even the size of his dad. He's like 6'4", maybe, right? Probably closer to like 6'3". So he's much more of a guard and a perimeter defender, but he's got enough bulk and he's strong enough that I think he could defend up a position eventually, or two positions even, and defend even some bigger wings eventually. But yeah, there's a lot of work to go. I would like to see him go back to school, really refine himself and build his own path, right? More. So I have no problem where, hey, if the team wants to promise him through the process, I have no doubt he's going to declare, he's going to go through some workouts and all that stuff. And then we'll see him probably make his decision based on where that lands. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him step back and return to school for another year and go. And it might even be a much more less circus-like environment next year too for him.
Well, and that's what you said real quick, Trevor, is just, he is a real prospect over time. And so if he wasn't, I'd be like, no, like go get drafted, be like, whatever, like just be, have a team bring you in, right? Let the Lakers bring him in, Trevor, because it makes LeBron happy and keeps him in town. Because I think Bronny can be a real prospect and a real NBA player, I don't want that to happen. Like that's kind of why, is because I do see him as a potential real 2025 guy. If I didn't think he had the potential, Trevor, I'd say, hey, no, just let's get it over with.
Go do your thing.
Go do your thing. No, like he has a real path to being a real NBA draft pick and a real NBA.
Let me ask you this, because I don't think this is the way it's going to go. What we heard recently from Rich Paul, it was about a month ago, suggested this is not going to happen. So this is a purely hypothetical. But LeBron has a player option. He could be a free agent. I think all hell would break loose if it became set in stone. LeBron will take whatever amount of money to play with his son and will follow to whatever team drafts him. Bryce, where do you think Bronny gets drafted in that world?
Really high. Like I like there is part of me that wants this to play out to find out, because I think it would be extremely high. There's some other dynamics around it. Like people say, like, would the Pistons do it? Well, yeah. Do they have the other moves to make that team an actual contender, right? So I think there's always a little bit of nuance to the question. What else can happen? What other dominoes could you put in place? But yeah, I mean, if you could get LeBron James to come play for you, and especially again, guys, if it was last year, this question would be even more fascinating, right? Victor Wembanyama, 12 years of Victor Wembanyama, or do you get, 2 or 3 years left of whatever LeBron James is and whatever you feel like Bronny James is as a prospect? So I think that becomes a little more intriguing. Like, where is the fault line? And I have a feeling if this actually played out, it would be fairly high.
Well, yeah, I think it would depend on the financial side of it too. How motivated are franchises by that? Because a lot of times fans don't think about that stuff.
That's true too. Yes,
the financial windfall from having LeBron on your team is massive, and so that I think would probably drive up the draft. Again, I don't think that's how this is going to go. They've already kind of said that no, that's not what we're going to do. But that would have been just an absolutely bonkers situation if that was the way this actually was going to play out. Because his draft would be unprecedented. He would be a lottery pick, I think, at least, and it would be crazy for an NBA draft, totally unprecedented.
I never think about these things as an owner. So you saying that like clicked as soon as you said it. Like the ownership would overrule whatever the GM thinks, right, guys? Like the owner of whatever team would say, we're selling out 41 home games. We're selling how many probably both of their jerseys, right? So you're getting the LeBron James number 23 and the Bronny James number, whatever it is, whatever number LeBron would decide to wear. You're selling, like the financial ramifications, no draft pick is going to come close to that. And so I think ownership would overrule this if a GM was saying no.
Yeah. And to your point, especially in a draft like this, you're not necessarily passing up on, well, we passed up, can't miss superstar X. Like to do this, it would be, hey, we kind of think of LeBron as our pick, and we go from there. Bryce, I want to bring this one up because these are guys I wrote a little bit about today after watching them quite a bit over the last week or so. The Colorado guys, so KJ Simpson, Tristan DeSilva, and Cody Williams, all draft guys, right? Probably going to be picked somewhere in the first and second round. But what do you think about those guys? Probably start with Williams since he's the biggest name of the three.
Yeah, so I have Cody kind of in the second tier right now. That could change. I'm really interested. He's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. For anybody who doesn't know, this is Jalen Williams' younger brother, the Oklahoma City Thunder star.
Wing one.
Yeah, the wing. J-Dub. Yeah, I forgot I have to. There's also a Jalen Williams potentially in this draft out of Auburn. So this is
OKC needs to get him.
Yeah,
they may.
No, my gosh. Please no. He does not look like his older brother right now. He is much more sleight of frame. He is a soft touch, silky smooth player, kind of plays at his own pace. The 3-point percentage is good, but the volume is low. What I like about Cody is kind of just like the all-around versatility from a wing, absolutely a second side creator, those type of things. And I've seen him take some really tough defensive matchups in games. And so that's kind of what you're looking like there. I really want to see him. I plan on watching tonight moving forward to get some more notes on him. Tristan DeSilva, I actually just wrote his for the basketball bulletin. I mean, it won't come out for weeks, but I'm trying to stay ahead here. He is a wingy forward, 6'9", got a little bit of skill, has shot it well. This is his 4th year, so he is already 22 years old. He turns 23 in May. So an older type prospect that we talked about earlier, really good off-ball defender, not great on the ball. His feet aren't great. Shooting has been decent. And then KJ Simpson will be really interesting. He's a smaller guard. He's really, really productive, can really score it, has had a great year. I'm interested to see where the value, you're only going to draft so many of these smaller guards in, a 58 pick draft. So for everybody who doesn't know, 2 picks have been forfeited. So there'll only be 58 selections. How many of those guys go and how many of those guys is he better than, right? Does somebody still buy the upside of, let's say, a DJ Wagner at Kentucky, who's I think has fallen out of the first round? Does he end up staying in the draft? Where would you go there? So that's what will be interesting with KJ Simpson. Really good player, probably finds his way at least on a 2-way. Maybe he's a second round 2-way like you talked about earlier. But I think Cody Williams is a surefire top 10 lottery. Tristan DeSilva into first, early second, and KJ Simpson somewhere in the second, maybe undrafted free agent that a team is really excited about.
Yeah, my thing with KJ Simpson, again, give me guards that can rebound, and he rebounds for a smaller guy, about 6'2" or so. Good playmaker. I don't know where I'm at with the shooting because he's been a good free throw shooter, but this is a guy who shot under 28% from 3 last year on about 4.5 attempts per game. This year, 4.5 attempts per game, and he's 45% or something like that.
Yeah, so, 45. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not fully sure what to think of that. Now, I'm with you, and I think it was Kevin Pelton. It was the one I saw bring this to the forefront about translating free throw shooting to 3-point shooting as a thing. He's also been very big on the rebounding is the most translatable skill. So, yeah, I really like him. Cody Williams, I'm huge on him. I think he's going to be a terrific player. He's a little bit bigger than his brother in terms of height and length.
Yeah.
He's just not as Jalen Williams is. He's a truck.
Yeah.
He's very, very strong. He's not quite that strong. And then DeSilva, I didn't realize until I really started to dive in, he grew up in Germany.
Yeah.
He's a Brazilian kid who's Brazilian and German nationality, dual national, but grew up playing overseas before he came over to Colorado. And he plays like a Euro. He just knows how to keep the ball moving. He's a pretty good off-ball mover. Like you said, he's pretty good as an off-ball defender. He's an okay rebounder. He gets after it a little bit there. So I think he's one of those guys who he seems like one of those players who, if he has a big run here in March, all of a sudden teams are like, oh, this is a guy. And it's funny because I always think about this. Something a scout told me once is the worst thing that can happen is a player who you're not all that high on makes a huge run in the conference tournament or in March Madness, because then your owner sees them and they start asking questions and he's like, He goes, what's worse is if they do it against the owner's school,
Yeah.
because then they overrate them. And he said, and the worst of all is if they're from the owner's school, because then it's like, oh no, so keep an eye on Michigan State guys to the Suns, maybe with Matt Ishbia if he weighs in there.
A couple quick notes on Tristan. His father was a professional boxer in Brazil, and then his brother Oscar played at Stanford, now plays for FC Barcelona. So some family, some family history there with Tristan. Really interesting prospect. Here's where I struggle, guys. And this is going to sound crazy. I feel bad. I think this way. We're talking about a top 10 pick, maybe a top 5 pick, a potential another first round pick, and a second round pick, right? Why hasn't Colorado been better?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And here's I think Tad Boyle's a really good coach. So I don't even, because this is the Peyton Watson thing. Peyton Watson, I don't want to say got a pass. Go look at Peyton Watson's freshman year numbers at UCLA. I've made a joke before. My numbers were better than Peyton Watson. And
it's actually true though.
Yeah, they weren't good. And it looks like rightfully so. Everybody blamed the coaching staff. That wasn't a good environment for him, all that. So I don't want to blame Tad Boyle and staff at Colorado because I think they do a good job. I know there's been injuries with these guys and all of that. I find myself going, what am I missing that they have 3 guys I like this much? A couple, Tristan again in his 4th year. KJ is not a freshman. Why aren't they better? And maybe that'll be put to rest here. They'll make a run in the Pac-12 tournament and all of that. But I can't shake that loose as I evaluate these 3 guys.
That happened a little bit with Cam Whitmore last year. Now he fell ultimately draft day because of the injury concerns. There were a lot of concerns that he might have major problems. Thankfully, he's not. And now he's shown you probably should have just drafted me higher. He's played really well. But one of the concerns that people brought up in the pre-draft process was, if he's so good, why doesn't his team win more? Why are they not, winning more? That's a major, kind of issue there for some teams. Some teams look at it and say, and then other teams will look at it and they'll be like, it doesn't really matter. I only care about the guy in the context of what will he be on our team in the NBA versus worried about that. So
USC is going to have the same thing, Trevor. Isaiah Collier's, maybe moving back into the lottery. Boogie Ellis is a good college player. Kobe Johnson is a potential NBA draft pick at some point, whether it's this year. DJ Rodman, they have a couple good shot blockers, and then you're bringing Bronny off the bench. Why isn't that team not 500, Trevor? So that's what it's interesting when you start to equate all of these things.
Yeah, exactly. And this is all stuff, of course, that we'll continue to monitor as we're getting closer and closer into draft season. Man, I can't wait, guys. There's so much going on in the NBA right now, but there's so much to look forward to this summer as well. It's why the NBA really is. It's almost a 365-day a year league at this point. We get a little bit of a slowdown in August and then September, the first half of September. But man, there is so much going on all the time, and I can't wait to get into all of that. But I do want to finish things out by taking a quick peek at the standings here, just to kind of update where we're at.
Look at that X, baby. Look at that X.
Look at that. Look at that.
Look where the Pistons are not, guys. Look at that. At the bottom.
It's funny. Washington. So I thought they had been eliminated the other night. They're hanging on to one scenario, keeps them alive. It is a 3-team tie between the Hawks, Hornets, and Pistons. If we ended up there, the Pistons would get it. That's the only thing keeping them alive. So the Hawks one more win and one more Pistons loss, and
they just got to win out.
Say goodbye. He will drop in front, but they're hanging in.
Looking at this, is this it? Is this the way the East table finishes?
No.
Okay.
I still believe Miami's going to end up in the top 6.
Okay.
I think Indiana will slide
right
back.
Now.
Yeah, I think they'll slide back, and Miami will move up. But I don't know. Maybe it could very well be.
So I wrote in my notes. I promise I could show people if they want to see them, and I didn't get to say it on the podcast. But one of my hot takes it was right after All-Star break was the Celtics were going to win the East by more than 10 games, which I assumed it happened more in NBA history than what it actually has. It was 3 or 4 times in the last 20, 25 years, something like that. They're going to do it. This Celtics team, sorry, Trevor, but shout out Keith. This Celtics team is awesome. And they have enough depth. Like I've questioned their depth, but every night like Porzingis doesn't play one and so-and-so doesn't like, so they've been able to rest guys a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I think this race after them is what fast. Like, I think I would just pick the Celtics going away to run through the East, even through the playoffs right now. Like, I think I'm just at that point. What I'm fascinated to see is who's going to be there to challenge them. I still don't find myself trusting the Bucks yet. If the Cavs and the Knicks get healthy, let alone the Sixers, I'm fascinated. I know like this isn't as many great teams as like what the West has, but whoever that second team is that emerges is really going to be interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the interesting part of the Eastern Conference. A lot of it is going to come down to health, and it's going to come down to, again, who can the Knicks get healthy, and can they get back to that run that they were on earlier in the season when they were just killing everybody? Can the Cavs put things together and get guys healthy? They've got talent. And then the same thing with the Bucks. There were moments we picked out that get right stretch for them a couple weeks ago. They used it. They looked really good. They've dropped a few games. They got blown out by the Warriors. You don't have a great sense of exactly what this Bucks team is or what they're going to be, but they have the talent, I think, to get there. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this plays out. I do agree, Keith. I think Miami probably moves up. And I got to say, I think the Celtics are hoping Miami moves up right now because Celtics do not want to see Miami in round one. Now, if it was the 7-8 right now between the 76ers and the Heat, I would predict the Heat would be the team to emerge there. But then again, I picked against the Heat in the play-in twice last year, and they proved me wrong both times. In fact, I think I picked against the Heat like in every round, and they just kept proving me wrong. But that is a team that I think can definitely make a push up in the standings. And then the Sixers all just comes down to Joel Embiid and whether or not he's healthy.
That's exactly it with Philly. If Joel Embiid is there, then they're a completely different team, and we'll see. But as we covered earlier this week, maybe with a week to go in the regular season, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. Question from the chat here. I'm going to say no. Maybe. I don't know. I liked Kai Jones coming in as a prospect, but just never really developed. Whatever he was going through at the end of the summertime was not good. Hopefully he's got all that straightened out, and maybe Philly can figure it out here. It's a 10-day signing, so nothing really lost from Philly's side. You got to sign somebody, but I don't think we're going to be counting on Kai Jones to do anything in this particular iteration of the 76ers, but maybe they get a look at him and they see something for next year. What's
going to happen, guys? The Bulls are going to get out of this, and they're going to end up in the playoffs, and then they're going to try to tell us that what they did at the deadline was right, and we're all still going to say no. Actually, you're still in the exact position we're telling you not to be in. But this is what's going to happen. They're going to beat the Hawks. They're going to upset somebody. They're going to be the 8 seed and say, "Hey, look at us. We made the playoffs," and then they're going to get swept by the Celtics.
Bulls fans are screaming in terror right now.
DeMar DeRozan, here's 3 years, $120 million or something like that.
Hey, he has been playing well, though.
He's been great.
He's been great.
He should win Clutch Player of the Year.
He's been awesome.
That's still a newer award. 100% should be the Clutch Player.
And Kobe White has been good as well. Like shout out Kobe White for the season he's had.
Kobe White contract was a little, people were like, I don't know, but people missed. He was pretty good at the end of last year. And now all of a sudden that contract looks like a really steal for the Bulls.
We recently did a best contracts and he made my list. Like he has a really good contract. We weren't able to use maxes or rookies like we did,
Sure.
And that's a really good contract if he can continue to score the ball the way he has.
Should be getting some most improved love.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the West right now. OKC is in the lead, but knotted with Denver, 46-20, both teams. How real is OKC?
Real for me.
I mean, real for playoffs.
Matchup dependent, I think, a little bit. They got to try to, like, the Lakers, we know is not necessarily a great matchup for them because the Lakers get inside on them and push them around a little bit. The rest of the teams that they could play, not going to worry about that quite as much. A lot of it is how long can they avoid Denver? And I know they've played Denver well, so that there's a little bit of noise in there, but they just, no one has an answer for Jokic, but they really don't have much they can go to because the big thing for them is the way they play. OKC can't bring size with size already on Jokic. They don't have a guy to kind of stand him up and then bring that second guy who could maybe help a little bit. So yeah, it's but I mean, I believe in them. I'm not going to pick them to go to the finals, but I've seen a lot of people saying I'll pick them to lose in the first round. I don't know that I can get there.
Yeah, right. I can't go that far, but I do think of the top 4 in the West, despite being the number 1 seed right now, if I'm an opposing team, that's the team I would prefer to play. If I'm in the bottom 4, if I were to draw one of those top 4 teams, I would prefer to play OKC.
I think what my stance going back whenever we first started having these conversations was I love this team. SGA is obviously an MVP candidate. Jalen Williams is awesome. Shed has been teams like it just seems like there's a rite of passage, right? Like you have to get into the playoffs. You have to get your heart broken. You have to learn lessons about yourself. This is why I didn't want them to. I love the move they made with Gordon Hayward. I didn't want them to go get like a big name. Like figure out if this big 3 is good enough. And maybe you'll find out that it's not, but I'd rather know before I did, took some swing for the fence. Go get a veteran that can help out a little bit. They're going to find out about a few guys. Can Josh Giddey play in the playoffs? Teams are already doing it in the regular season where they just don't guard him. Yeah. Are they going to be able to keep him on the floor? If not, is Cason Wallace that guy? Is Isaiah Joe that guy? Is Aaron, who is the guy that again can play those minutes? So I think this is the year where they just learn about themselves, but I give them a chance because SGA is unreal. And Jalen Williams takes the games over when SGA is on the bench or whatever as well. So, and Chet anchoring the defense. So I don't think they do it, but they're really good.
Completely different animal when you're playing the same team.
True.
Somewhere between 4 and 7 games over a 2-week period. Mm-hmm. It works completely differently. You have to be really, you almost have to go through it first, but before you fully get there. So it's going to be, it'll be trying for them for sure, but I think they've got enough talent to make a little bit of a run. I've just get them behind a couple of teams. But I mean, Denver's right where I think we all thought they would be in the end is, they're pushing, they'll win in the mid 50s in games and probably be the 1 or 2 seed and go. Minnesota's hanging tough without Cat. So that's good to see. Clippers, Kawhi, thankfully looks like wasn't a real.
Sounds like he's going to be okay.
Yeah, he played last night and played really well. And
Luka, his scan came back clean too, so that's great news for the Mavs.
Pelicans are healthy and playing pretty good basketball too. So yeah, I mean, and then that battle from I'd still kind of got New Orleans. I guess I shouldn't have them fully out of it. They're only a couple games clear of the play-in tournament, but I don't know. I feel like they're just on a little bit of a different level, but yeah, I mean, it's an absolute battle down there for those teams in the play-in. Like it's, they right now today, KD and the Suns, Luke and the Mavs, LeBron and the Lakers, AD, Curry and Green and the Warriors. Like that's an insane play-in tournament field.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of fun though. I mean, I think what hasn't registered with everybody is like right now, the Lakers and the Warriors can't both get out of it. I think you guys touched on this a little bit that this still doesn't always click for the Lakers and the Warriors in the 9-10 means that one of those teams is 1 and out. And even the team that wins it has to go win a second game just to get in on the road. And
whoever gets that first game, like ESPN, TNT, whoever it is going to be like over the moon until the next morning when they're like, wait, now one of those teams is gone.
Yeah.
Like now one of them's gone. Like that's that's a tough spot.
But then they'll be able to talk about their off season, right? What happened? What happens with Clay? What happens with
Sure.
Without a doubt. I saw somebody asked about Blake Griffin in the chat. He did an interview with the Boston Globe recently where he basically said he's good right now. So I don't think you're going to even see him be a April signing for one of these teams that will pull him in for the playoff run. He seems pretty happy just being with the family now. I think he might be done. This is how it goes in the NBA, guys. Some guys get the full on retirement speech and great last moment and all that. And some guys, they just kind of fade away and they just drop off a roster and you don't see them. I think that's probably where we're headed, but it was very much his choice. The Celtics said, you want to come back, we have a roster spot for you. They still have a roster spot now, and I think they'd very happily take Blake Griffin if he wanted to play, but it doesn't seem like that's really where he's at.
Real quick story on Blake Griffin. We opened at Oklahoma my senior year of college, and this dude was the most intimidating. Like, I did play Division I, so like, you don't get intimidated. I was intimidated walking into the gym. We walked into the gym. He was working out beforehand, drenching sweat. And like, he's just a physical.
Yeah, he was huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
And of course they killed us because we were who we were and they were who they were. But I mean, he was, when people ask me who the best player I ever played against, it was, I was actually out that game. I had a torn ACL still, but he was by far the best player I shared the floor with, you know, however you want to say it, just unbelievable. And I guess just want to take this, like, just to remind everybody, like, how good this guy was, how athletic he was, and then turned into like a skilled player as well, right? Like, some people remember the crazy athleticism and dunks, but then was also able to pass the ball and shoot it a little bit and all of that. Just a really, really good player.
Yeah, big time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I was at the Clippers preseason game his rookie year when he first injured his knee. I was sitting right there when he went up and threw down that dunk, and we all went, "Oh my gosh!" And then when he came down, it was, "Oh no, what has happened here with this?" I mean, he was absolutely insane athlete and just so strong, so powerful. If this is it for him, then they're good for it. You know, if he's made the decision, I've made plenty of money and I'm good where I'm at, then great. You know, guys don't always have to come back and hang on if they don't want to, especially a guy like Blake who's done a lot over the course of his career. But, you know, as the chat is noting, man, he could have a kind of a free playoff run, maybe a free championship, just jump in and off you go. But if that's not where his heart is, then by all means, do what's important for him. That's where he's at in life right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and he's, you know, he has his family and everything. So yeah, it turns into, he, you know, just wanted to do something different. I'll give my quick, they were a couple years ahead of me in school, but I played against, my AAU team regularly played against the BABC, which is the Boston Athletic Basketball Club. And I played in a game where they had Chris Herron and Scooney Penn on the floor together. And Chris Herron barely played because I think he was going through some of his Chris Herron stuff at that point, even at that age. But Scooney Penn came out, and I remember we were like, this guy doesn't ever dribble with his offhand. And then we realized he was basically treating the game as, I'm going to work on my left today. It just dominated and just killed us. He put numbers up on me that are embarrassing. It was really rough. And then the next year we played that BABC team when they had the Curley brothers on it, Mickey and Mike Curley, or Mickey and Matt Curley rather, Bill Curley's younger brothers. And they started the game off the opening tip. They ran the throw it off the backboard to each player, and then Matt Curley finished him with a dunk, and that was the end of it. And like, the worst player on that team was Rick Fox's little brother that year. So yeah, I've had some numbers dropped on me at a time. So
good times when you're getting beat bad.
Oh man, it was bad too. I think we lost one game like 83-10. I think I had like 8 of the 10 though, so I'll tell.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You can say you put up some buckets.
I was shooting from just inside half court because that was all I could do. Shoot.
that was the only way. You weren't getting a shot anywhere closer than that against those guys.
Nope, just letting it fly. But man, Bryce, it was so cool to have you here, guys. So everybody knows, we will have Bryce on. I don't know if it'll be a Friday. We talked about why that can be kind of hard to make work, but we'll have Bryce on, just a regular episode of the show, a recorded episode, when we get a little bit closer to the draft, at least once more, maybe twice, and maybe once is kind of the tournaments wrapping up and get a sense of some of that. And then once when we're much closer into the draft. So we'll be really happy to have Bryce there. You know, if you guys can drop into Trevor, just dropped it in the chat, the basketball bulletin. You can get in there and subscribe. You're going to get all Bryce's scouting notes in there, his raw scout notes on all these players, and then Trevor and I's thoughts on different stuff around the league as we put that in there. And then throw us a subscription or you know, at least a like on this video. We had like 3,000 people watching today. So subscribe to the channel over on YouTube for a front office show and like the video and get it out there for everybody else to see.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube if you're not already a subscriber. And again, Bryce, thanks for jumping on. This was a lot of fun.
No, I had a blast. I looked up a little bit ago. I was like, dang, we're 40 minutes in. I feel like we haven't even talked about that many things.
Time flies.
Yes, it does. So I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to come back. And even more so, I've enjoyed getting to know both of you personally as friends and all of that. Like I appreciate that as much as anything, but this was obviously a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend. Keith and I are planning on doing a little bonus episode tomorrow because we missed yesterday. So that'll be coming out. Be on the lookout for that one. Till then, everybody. See ya and stay safe.